So all the letting go.
Greetings and welcome to In the Trees, the cannabis, gardening, and lifestyle podcast highlighting methods, products, growers, and breeders from Maine, the East Coast, and beyond. I'm your host, Mr. Roots, and I'm stoked to deliver you the lowdown on all things cannabis, presented not just for the well-vetted OGs in the garden, but for those buying a seed pack to grow their very first garden. This show is especially for those buying their very first cannabis to try. If you are listening in your car, then strap on your seatbelt.
So all the letting go.
And if you are listening in the garden, turn us up so you can hear us over the fans. Sending out good vibes from the rock-bound coast of Maine, we are In the Trees.
A 100%. That's what I prefer. That's how I make all my hashes from sun-grown flower. I don't have a greenhouse or anything like that, so we're talking full sun.
Welcome to In the Trees podcast. Thank you all so much for joining us. We want to send some love out there to all those who are tuning in and all those who have helped spread the word and supported this podcast since the beginning. We are very grateful. And if this is your first time joining us, we're glad that you looked us up and are listening. Please make yourself at home and don't forget to look back through our past episodes, as we've been joined by some great guests and many have told some amazing stony stories. On today's episode, we're stoked to be joined by Maine-based breeder Crystal Rose Seed Company, whose owner Drew sparked up some real nice conversation on the mic. But first we wanted to recap a clip from all the way back on episode 2 with Sean from Melting Pot Farm, bringing some dialogue that really stands out. In the Trees podcast is proudly sponsored by the Maine Craft Cannabis Association. The MCCA is a diverse group of businesses and activists committed to supporting an authentic craft cannabis industry in Maine. Their motto, People, Place, and Plant, represents their focus on fighting for craft Maine-grown businesses through their legislative work in Augusta. The MCCA's social activism supports all Mainers' legal protected access to the plant. Check them out on Facebook and Instagram by searching for Maine Craft Cannabis Association, and please show your support to this extremely valuable organization. In the Canopy. As above, so below. From soil to oil. From the roots to the fruits. The cycles of life in the gardens we love.
So all the letting go.
With the plants with which we care. This is the knowledge that we share. For this In the Canopy, we want to focus on something that's not necessarily gardening advice, which is what our In the Canopy feature is intended to provide to you, and we'll be dropping more of very soon. But this is something that can certainly be a part of your gardening practices and lifestyle. This is something that we all can be reminded of when considering how to treat people, and also how to deal with others in business, in the cannabis community, as well as our personal lives. This past March, when I was working on interview questions for Melting Pot Farm, I noticed his Harvey Ball smiley face logo and thought about how, in this industry, that in itself, a smile, can speak volumes. From what I know of him, Melty maintains pretty positive vibes. He's a conscious, caring individual, which, when you poke around on some of the people's pages that you might follow on social media, or read some of the things that people post in threads, this lack of throwing stones or engaging in negativity can be fairly contrasting. So I figured I would ask him how he maintains his positivity in today's world. He had this to say. Something that I really respect about you, man, is you keep a positive vibe on social media. Even your logo's happy, right? And
That's it.
Smiley face.
That's
you know?
right.
How do you maintain this when there can be haters out there?
Yeah.
Right. How do you feel that?
I guess I haven't had to deal with too much of that, luckily. I'm pretty firm on myself. Anyone who knows me closely knows that I'm big on accountability. I don't look to give myself excuses or anything like that. I hope that if anyone had a problem with me personally or what I was doing, that they would be able to approach me and we could just come to an understanding of what the issue was. But the simple answer is I just don't have time for anything like that.
Yeah.
I just don't have time for it. I'm very lucky to be where I am in life, and I'm very happy, and I'm not trying to drag anyone down.
It's the art of letting go.
It sounds like accountability, like personal accountability is pretty big with you.
Yeah.
Yeah. A lot of that can be taken care of in-house, you know.
And that doesn't happen overnight. That's based on me. I grew up being past free, to the point where I did what I wanted to do, and I wasn't accountable. I didn't hold people accountable, and life was a free for all, which is great. And I had fun with that. But I also understand that how you come across, and if you do what you say, and if you just tread lightly, don't burn bridges, all those cliches, you can't see a mob of haters following you.
Respect on that.
It's the art of letting go.
I think Melty's perspective on this topic is well put and is really important to keep in mind if we're going to promote a strong cannabis community here in Maine. Lack of understanding, infighting, backbiting, negativity, this brings energy that can drain those who are exposed to it. It drains them at a time when we all should be coming together to build this community up and fill it with good people, so we can all finally celebrate legal cannabis business in our great state after years of anxiety, incarceration, torn up families, blood money, and a lack of progress in the cannabis field from governmental and societal oppression. So in case you missed it the first time, I'm going to recap Melty's answers to my question for you about how he maintains his positivity and deals with any would-be haters. All right. Melting Pot Farm maintains a high standard of personal accountability and doesn't prefer to engage in making excuses for himself or actions that he might have done that would negatively affect another person. If a negative person, a pot stirrer, or a hater pops up, or if someone's words or energy are abrasive and counterproductive, he stated that he doesn't find value in giving much or any time to that person. Probably this time is better spent with others, or in the garden. Staying focused on gardening and tending your garden means less time swinging swords. Melty said that he doesn't choose to drag people down in this life and doesn't give time to those choosing to do that to him. He recognizes that how you come across to people, the energy that you put out there, is important, and it gives people a good read on who you are, where you're coming from, and probably where you're going. Lastly, he ends his answer to my question with 3 points that are very constructive for people to remember, especially if you own a cannabis business. Do what you say you're gonna do, tread lightly, and don't burn bridges. These are some high teachings, and I'm grateful to Melting Pot Farm for coming on the show and putting this knowledge out there. Don't forget to give the man a follow on Instagram at Melting Pot Farm, and if you're one of the lucky ones to score some of his fine flowers from Sensimilla 207 in Lewiston or the Green Alchemist in Winthrop before they almost instantly sell out, rest assured what you're smoking on is coming from one of Maine's best, a real consciousness and integrity. Respect, Melty, and respect out to all the old school International Cannographic Forum family from In The Trees podcast. Frass Valley is an organic superworm-based garden amendment that I personally have used a bunch in my garden. It has a balanced NPK ratio and a lab-tested level of keton at 16.9%. This means that it aids your plant in building its immune system, increasing beneficial microorganisms and mycorrhiza in your soil, while also discouraging soil-borne insects who might be looking to prey on your garden. If you are looking for an amendment that will help you grow strong plants, check them out at Frass Valley on Instagram or go to their website frassvalley.com to order some today. Listeners of the show receive 10% off their orders by using the code words In The Trees at checkout. Wait till you see what Frass Valley's Superworm Frass can do for your garden. I had the pleasure of having a proper sit-down a few months ago with Drew from Western Maine-based Crystal Rose Seed Company, who, along with his lovely partner Amanda and their very sweet old English bulldog Bertha, stopped by the Alight studio for a session and to talk shop. Crystal Rose Seed Company is a family affair, and In The Trees podcast is happy to have had the opportunity to meet Drew and Amanda both, and to jump on the mic with Drew to talk about Crystal Rose's approach to growing and breeding the plant, as well as his views on some of the strains he's working with currently, including a very select pie-eyed stud from Maine hash royalty and a lineage from an inner circle of breeders and hash makers who've been representing some elite level fire. Sitting and talking with Drew felt very easy and laid back. He caught a nice vibe off some High Striker Farms Granimals flower that he shared a joint of with Amanda. And I want to add that In The Trees podcast is beyond honored to have been able to enjoy a session with Amanda, who is celebrating an awesome decade milestone of a birthday the day that this recording was made. Happy birthday again, Amanda. Drew had brought some real nice crosses that he made, including some of the Do-si-do back cross that I have vegging right now, along with some very tasty, very smooth Sandy Beaches hash rosin that he had made. Stuff worked like magic for an MCL tear I've been struggling to rest and heal from. Also, I've been struggling to save some of that Sandy Beaches hash for guests to try. This interview had a real nice flow to it, and I'm happy to present this to you guys. So let's get into it. Collect a nice dab on your scoop tool, put it in the chamber, and double tap that peak button. Because In The Trees podcast and Crystal Rose Seed Company are bringing that fire. We are styling today In The Trees podcast, rolling up OCBs without a filter. High Striker Farms Granimals. We're bringing it back, pre-filter days. Were there ever pre-filter days?
No.
For me, there was.
For all the letting go.
So this is a spontaneous combustion session with High Striker Farms Granimals.
Mm-hmm.
And Drew, what's that Granimal smell like to you?
Definitely, you get that like grape pie-esque like terp profile that like comes into play with a lot of those grape pie crosses that he did, but it has that cookies, like, I don't know. I love animal cookies. I have for a long time, like, never really got a chance to grow it out. Whenever I see it, though, I can't help but pull the trigger on, like, whether it's concentrates or even I love getting new flower. Recently tried the grape pie itself and had like really good results with how much resin was on it, really good results with how like it stacked up, but growing it, I didn't anticipate a plant with like no stretch. And I was just like, oh, okay, we're gonna have to adjust where we're throwing the net next time because it did not want to get into it. Right. It probably didn't help that we were running some amnesia crosses next to it. So those tend to throw, double their size.
Right. Keep going and going.
Yeah, for sure.
That's it's a great cross. I find the same thing. Animal cookies, the 09 animal cookies.
Yep.
Some people hate on the cookies, but hey, some people hate on all kinds of things.
I mean, I was definitely like interested in staying away from cookies when they first dropped out. Growing up in New York, like you definitely pick your favorites, you know, it's hard to branch out from there. But once I started smoking them more and growing them more, and like definitely once I started breeding with them, I was like, oh boy, like this is cool. Like the structure is very unique. So if you have a male that's like not cookies dominant, you can be like, all right, cool. None of that is going to be like a cookies plant. This is going to lead to other stuff. Or in the flip side of that, when Harry and Oni did the cherry pie tangy drops, we got a bunch of those, and I could see that like forum cookies that was in that cross, which was so far down the line, but come right through and you're like, okay, cool. These are more cookies-esque looking plants versus trop, or versus, you know, cherry pie or whatever, right? I definitely like noticing those differences. I like being able to look in a veg room and say, okay, I know what parents are in here, so this leans more towards the mom, or this leans more towards the dad. And a lot of the times you can just, you know, make more, not say early selections, because you obviously don't know until it's all said and done, but I tend to like be able to look at things and be like, all right, I want something that's more similar to the way mama runs. Let me focus more on this plant. Or sometimes you get that one and you're like, oh, I didn't even pay attention to this at all. Like, right. You know, but yeah, I definitely like to make my selections, you know, based off of mama, and I like to be able to look at plants and say, you know, okay, the genetic lines are here. This looks like animal cookies, or this looks like what I've seen Do-si-do look like in the past, or, you know, this doesn't look anything like any of that, and maybe I didn't see what I was looking for. I definitely appreciate the differences in the plants, though.
So, Drew, any taste off that Granimals?
Yeah, has that like cushy, smooth, not necessarily like overpowering in the like, you know, front of the mouth, but it has that mouth coating. Like I just ripped like something really nice. Let me get into it.
Yeah.
So all the letting go.
I don't really smoke a whole lot of flowers, like, and I definitely don't smoke any more concentrates, or haven't in a while. And so effects like hit me pretty like traditionally, right? I get that whole I feel stoned effect that doesn't normally happen, especially when like you've been smoking for a while. It was nice to get that back after smoking concentrates for as long as I have. It was nice to be like, wow, I'm actually like, I'm there, I'm good for a little bit.
I've talked to some shop owners locally. That's a very common question. What does it mean, full spectrum?
Right.
So they get that a lot of times. Do you have any answer for that, for what full spectrum means?
So that's like a pretty tough question. A full spectrum to one person could be different than someone else. The quintessential full spectrum would be all THC compounds, all CBD compounds, right? Like that's your full spectrum. But I know that like full spectrum hash does not have any CBD, or very low amounts of CBD, right? And it would have all the grades of the bags.
Yep. So
now you're looking at it like, well, in what context are you talking about full spectrum?
Right. So yeah, you see it on multi platforms or multi labels.
Yes.
Yeah, for hashish or hash. That's most of the time you see it.
Right.
Yeah.
I think that if the distillate's made right, you know, the beginning product is good, the pre-run, right?
Yeah.
If that's all good quality herb, you know, processed down into good quality distillate, like that's perfectly okay by me. Obviously, I prefer like hash rosin edibles. I think they definitely get the job done.
Yeah.
Right.
That's the stuff right there.
Yeah, but sometimes those burps aren't that nice tasting afterwards.
Yeah.
But no, yeah, hash rosin edibles are nice. They're They're probably the best that you can find.
So I got a question about powdery mildew.
Shoot.
Your opinion about whether or not it's systemic or happens to the plant on a case-by-case basis, and it doesn't forward it in its genetic cellular makeup. Because there's some back and forth about this.
Right. I'm not a scientist, right?
Sure,
so
sure.
I'm not like doing any plant biology to say, you know, inside the cell is doing this. If a plant has gotten powdery mildew before, its susceptibility is through the roof now, right? So if it's been exposed, it can catch it again.
Yeah.
No questions.
Right.
But if that clone has powdery mildew and it enters an environment that that powdery mildew does not like, and the plant can still survive and you can take enough clones, the chances of outrunning powdery with the right environment, the right IPM system, and a good batch of cloning, you can outrun it.
Okay.
And you can actually take that same cutting that had powdery mildew in 2012 and run it in 2014, the same one, and it not have powdery.
This is great information for the cannabis community right here. This is something that you all should listen closely with. I found the same thing.
Yeah.
I found a great way to do it as well is to get that clone outside.
Yes.
Get it outside. Let it sit in the sun. Let it acclimate to its own circadian rhythm with nature as the ultimate helper.
Yeah.
And then get your cut from that plant the second week of July.
Okay.
This is the apex, and it's right before it goes into pre-flower.
Interesting.
So it's reached that point. I actually got that from Mr. Bob Hemphill.
Crickets and
cicada seeds, yeah. But yeah, other people have attested the same thing. It seems accurate to me, right? And you would attest at the outdoors.
Definitely. I mean, I totally agree with that. I did not pinpoint it so close as to being the second week in July, right? Which is awesome for me. Like, sweet. That's now there's my benchmark. All next year we got revitalized moms coming at you. You know,
nice.
But that whole, I mean, nothing can beat the sun. That whole aspect of putting a plant outdoors to like revitalize, right? I've been on board with, you know, I've done it pretty much every year I could.
Right.
Did not know that there's like such a specific timeline.
And you know, like things get loose in the cannabis community sometimes too.
But that makes sense, man. Like that's like right on it. Like that's awesome.
It's like the peak of summer right before we're starting to get, well, we can feel it now, right before
it starts to dip and get cold.
And that's strain dependent as well, I would imagine, because you have some of those plants that aren't tripping into flower till mid or end of August.
Yeah.
So with a strain like that, sure, maybe take your clone the first week of August, second week of August, because maybe that's the apex. That's the pinnacle point before we start getting into pre-flower, which isn't the best time to take clones. They're already focusing on doing something different at that point.
Right. I think that we're on the same page as far as like healthy plants are above all else important.
Yeah.
Right?
And doesn't nature make them healthy again?
There's nothing that beats the sun and nothing that beats the earth. Either,
yes.
Right. Like I grew in containers on the ground for a while until like 3 years ago. Yeah. And then I went right into the ground and I won't look back. Right. I mean, it's to be able to link up with the soil food web that's in nature, right? And Maine is really the most dramatic climate, right? When fall comes and winter's bearing down, like all those plants almost seem like overnight. The wind blows through and all those leaves are gone. Yeah. Well, something had to give that signal. You know what I mean? Those leaves were ready for that wind. It wasn't like the wind came and just took the leaves with it, right? Yeah. So that signal had to have been sent from the roots, from the earth. Well, cannabis plants respond the same way, right? So like when our plants are in the ground, I'm noticing they're triggering quicker. I notice that they're finishing quicker. And for my purpose, that's exactly what I want to see. Yeah. And it helps, obviously, genetics are a huge player, the only player really that you can manipulate within that system. Yeah. So I focused on that. That turned into where I saw my passion.
For all the letting go.
I'm interested in doing the greenhouse thing next year. I've done full sun pretty much exclusively.
Yeah.
Just based off of how much my setting is, right? So
Right.
like one space would be, the old house was not necessarily a whole ton of sun. The new house has a little bit more sun.
Nice.
And so now I'm like, all right, well, if I have the sun, right, like why can't I have a structure too? So
Yeah.
I'm like really interested in like exploring the greenhouse thing. And the ones that I've seen that are really nice are just like that. Nice big bed in the center,
Yeah.
a little bit of walkway.
Right.
So, the tarping or whatever is only where those plants aren't going to be.
If you were buying a pack of seeds,
Yep.
and you had to choose, say you had $150
Okay.
and you wanted to buy a 10 pack of seeds.
Yep.
What kind of process would you look for? And do you think that's enough money even to buy a proper pack of seeds?
Definitely think it's enough money, right? That's like probably like the limit that I normally want to like invest, right? As much as like some of these like high ticket strains are desirable, right? Packs of seeds are desirable, trying to hunt that strain or the new one, right? I think that at $150, like that's like pretty much, you're paying to play.
Mhm.
And you're hoping that you're going to at least find that one keeper, right, out of that 10 pack. So when I make my picks, right, like I would go forward with, what do I want to smoke? That's the first thing I ask other people. That's the first thing I'd ask myself. What do you like to smoke, right? If you like to smoke, really stony, more indica, more of that speed, right? Then I would recommend finding something like that, right? Same thing going the other way with more sativa dominant stuff.
Yeah.
Then I would take it into what, if you know exactly what strain that is versus more than just indica or sativa. If you know you like Chem Dogs or you like OG Kush or you like, Super Silver Haze, find something that's bred with that parent, right?
Mhm.
As one of the parents. That way you can sort of have something to play off of, whether you remember a smell or taste or the look even, right?
Mhm.
As like a benchmark.
Yeah.
Sometimes though, there's strains now with how many new crosses are on the market. I don't know, or I may not know what, for instance, China Cat is, right? I have this in one of my crosses. No one knows what it is. Now, if I were to tell you it's Trinity by Original New York City Diesel, you're going to be like, well, I know what that
Boom.
is.
Yeah.
Right? But no one knows what China Cat is. China
Right.
Cat is a cross from Top Dog Seeds,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
That is Trinity by Original New York City Diesel, right? It makes super stout, strong plants with great branching, don't need any support, no net, mold resistant, awesome plant for our environment. Great. No one knows what it is.
Right.
So in the vein of like, what do you want to do with that after you've grown it? That's also a huge thing, right? If you're
Mhm.
just growing it for yourself and you want a great plant, mold resistant, strong, easy to grow, so anybody should have a package for you that has that as an option, right?
The mold resistant thing, unfortunately, we don't see enough of, I think.
I don't think, I don't see that as a benchmark. Like no one's going out of their way to say this is mold resistant.
They're not breeding for mold resistance.
And they're
a lot
not
of times
breeding
either.
for that either.
No, yeah.
No, I completely agree. I think that if you're looking for something that like, you need to do something with that at the end of the round, right? You're not going to want to get something that you don't know what it is, or your buddies don't know what it is, or, your patients don't know what it is. You're going to want to get something that is recognizable too, right? So that's where a lot of these, animal cookies hybrids come in, because animal cookies is a pretty popular strain, right? Or glue hybrids where
Mhm.
like, you know, everyone knows what glue is and has seen a batch of glue, right? So
For
like,
those of you who don't, Gorilla Glue 4 usually.
right.
Sometimes you'll see a Gorilla Glue 1, but usually it's the 4.
Yes, the Gorilla Glue 4. That's like the only one that I reference, you know what I
Yeah,
mean? That's the one I've had most experience with. Like,
Right.
there's been a few others out there, but the number 4, the Gorilla Glue 4, that's the one.
Yeah.
The art of letting go.
So there's going to be some people that are approaching the adult use market that when they go into these storefronts, they may be having a difficult time selecting some of the flower that they're seeing in there because they're taking a look at the way flower looks on Instagram
Yes.
or via media and thinking that that's how I could base my decision about which flower to buy. Do you think it's okay for patrons of a storefront to ask to smell the flower prior to purchasing it?
I do. I mean, I feel like that's the best way.
Yeah.
I feel like even within the times that we are right now with COVID and all that, as far as being able to get your face near it, I think that there's ways that you can still do it enough.
Mm-hmm.
I would love for someone to come up with like a scratch and sniff sticker, you know, to be like, all right, cool. And then you're good. Right. But I think that smelling it is going to give you a better representation of that flower,
Mm-hmm.
specifically how it's going to smoke,
Yeah.
specifically how, you know, how early it was pulled or how early it was packed.
Yeah.
Right. Smell is going to tell you a lot.
So you think terpenes drive, well, obviously they drive flavor. You think the terpenes that people are smelling off that are going to drive quality as well?
I think they go hand in hand, right? Like better quality flower is going to have more terpenes. And a lot of times with the market the way it is and how popular cannabis is and how the availability for everyone to get cannabis is getting easier and easier, the supply isn't there, right?
Yeah.
So all these people are trying to get their product into a storefront and might be pushing that quick dry, and you're going to know immediately if that has that weird smell the second you crack into the jar and smell it.
Right.
And so I think that would be awesome if we could always smell before we purchase, right?
Yeah.
Visually, yeah, I mean, everyone's going to want something that looks frosty, and let's be honest, the people buying it for the storefronts are looking for something that looks frosty. Like the frost factor is going to be there. But how does it smell? And ultimately, how does it smoke? Obviously, we can't like try before we buy, right?
That'd be nice though.
It would, wouldn't it? But, you know, how's it smoke? You can tell too, right? Like for the most part, based off of how it smells.
Yeah. Yeah, it'd be cool to get a flight. Like you go to a brewery.
Yeah, right? Like
just a little taste, you know.
Interesting.
5 1-ies.
I was just going to say, I saw them at like their pre-packs, right? At like Atlantic Farms.
Yeah.
I saw that they just dropped those.
That's right. The glass tubes.
Yeah, like
glass blunts.
that'd be perfect, right? Like one toke.
Yeah.
Just enough and be like, all right, this is and this is maybe, I don't know, maybe we're onto something.
Interesting. Yeah. Yeah. With terpenes, I would say that terpenes for people trying to buy some flower is probably going to be the best indication for the quality of flower.
Agreed.
Yeah. That's something to keep in mind. Those of you who are trying to find some quality flower in these storefronts across Maine, check and see if you can get a smell off it, and then vet it off that. It's a good place to start. Yeah. I'd like to go back to that question about buying seeds.
Sure.
If somebody is looking to Crystal Rose Seed Company for buying a pack of seeds, how much assistance do you give them with picking out the right seed for them?
I mean, I'm an open book. If you've got a question as far as like anything that I've made, right, I can pretty much tell you up and down whatever you need to know about it. As far as like what other people have made, I have that weird like Rolodex effect that some people get with like sports stats. I have with cannabis, right? So like I can pretty much rattle off what the crosses are, or for the most part, who made them even. So I'm pretty much open when people ask me things. If they have any type of like, oh, how's it germinate? Or, what type of training did you, I mean, I can give you all that also, but most of the questions are always like, how fast is it as far as flower time goes? How much does it yield? Which is kind of a loaded question, because even in my own personal experience, I've had 2 plants that I gave the same amount of attention and love to, and like, they should have been really chunky, and, maybe neither of them were that chunky, right? So yield is like a tough one to answer. Obviously, you want to tell everyone, the best, right? But it's really on the gardener. If you've got a nice dialed in environment, I mean, you can get plants to do some crazy things. If you're just going at it for fun, I mean, there are easier to grow crosses than maybe the one you were looking at, right? When a customer comes to me and says, like, are they fems or regs? That tends to be a big question too, because there's a stigma against regular seeds, that they're harder to grow. The risk is a little bit more being a male is in there. And I think that people don't really understand what happens when you make feminized seeds. They just look at it as like a guaranteed female, which may or may not always be the case. I know personally, I've had to check, I check everything. I've always had to check everything, but I see more intersex traits come up in different fem stock, right? But that's usually only that, first round, that first time when you grow, for me, I flower the seed mom. Some people don't. I do. I think that, that's going to give me the best chance of seeing what's going on. And then you run the clone and you're like, man, this was way different than what that seed mom was. But usually if there's any issues, you're going to see them pop up within that seed mom and might not necessarily see them pop up in the clone, right? So I try to run everything from seed mom, like from the mom, from the seed I plant. I also get a lot of questions about indoor versus outdoor, right? Some gardeners are just outdoor, whether they're, new and only have their backyard next to their tomatoes to grow in, or maybe they just don't want to have a grow within their house. For people that only have an outdoor setup, I mean, you can grow any of my crosses outdoors and they'll perform great. But there are a couple that I don't know if they would perform as well indoors, right?
Oh, that's interesting. A lot of times it's the opposite.
Well, just based off of like how the plants grow, like I guess that's just also in my context, right? I see a lot of very similar styles of growing.
Yeah.
Once you swim down certain streams, like kind of everyone that you're talking to does a variation of the same thing, right? So I see a lot of trellis netting. Like I don't see hardly any straight up and down structure trees. So across it, I have Cats Under the Stars, right? It's a great plant. It's awesome for structure. It's strong. You cannot weave that through a net and get that like shrub effect, right? Because the branches just won't want to bend like that. Yeah, you can spread it out, you can get the light to penetrate through, but you're not going to be able to like weave it like you would glue or an OG, right? Like I have a GMO. Yeah. Oh my God. Like you can weave that like for 4 days and you'll still get that nice canopy level, right? But that same cross, that China cat, the Cats Under the Stars, the China cat in that is so dominant and is a great outdoor plant, right? I can put one of those in a field and it have one stake and it'll make it through any bit of rain, any bit of wind. Like we're ready to grow, and they just sit there and just branch out, and they'll fill in for flower, and you take them down and you're like, all right, that was cool. Low maintenance, right? But it's not necessarily something I'd recommend for an indoor gardener, right? Now something like the Buffalo Soldier, right? It's a Rude Boy OG by OGKB Triple Kush, right? That's a great plant for an indoor gardener.
Yeah.
Someone who's on
Stuff
drippers,
looks like fire too, man. Yeah.
like strong.
Yeah.
Like that's some seriously good flower. And
Love the name.
that one,
Dreadlock Rasta.
Seymour Terps coined that one. I was
Oh,
like
nice.
talking to him and was like, dude, like I have this cross. I don't really know what to call it.
Yeah.
Like I'm just, it's good. It's this. And he's like, well, how about Buffalo Soldier? And I was like, dude, that's perfect.
Yeah.
Like Rude Boy,
With the
like
Rude Boy
the whole,
OG.
dude, the whole thing,
Perfect.
it just worked. And so, nods to him for that. Like he definitely helped with that naming. But yeah, that's a plant that like, you can weave it through. It's going to pack on some really nice golf balls of resin, Might not necessarily want to run that outdoors, right? It's a little bit more prone to mold and mildew just based off of the genetics in it are not that desirable for our climate. Now, you take that same Rude Boy and you run it in California, Northern California, I mean, you're going to love it. You're going to be right there with the SFVs and all that, right? Just might not work for someone who's trying to grow in Maine.
Right.
Outdoors. Indoors, run it all day.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep. They like to have their environments dialed in. That's for sure.
Yeah, definitely. And even the same like pack of seeds can run different in that environment, right? Like a pack of pick one. Sandy beaches, right? Like when we run it indoors, it's a little bit more leafy, right? It tends to have a little bit more denser nugget, right?
Yeah.
You run it outdoors though, you get long colas of just like minimal leaf and you're like, all right, well this is great,
Yeah.
But yeah, I think a lot of that's also phenotype too, right? Like some phenos tend to pack on a little bit more leaf.
So that brings up my next question, sun-grown cannabis.
Yes.
I was wondering if you could walk us through your opinion about sun-grown cannabis being used in solventless hash.
Go for it. 100%. That's what I prefer. That's how I make all my hashes from sun-grown flower. I don't have a structure like a DEP or greenhouse or anything like that. So we're talking full sun, full elements. I found that a lot of the things I learned while indoor gardening do not apply to outdoor gardening. I don't super crop. I think that breaking that like tissue layer causes way more problems than it does benefit, right?
Outdoors.
For outdoors, right? So for me, I prefer growing outdoor flower in Maine for solventless hash. It's worked and it still works.
What do you prefer about it, about the sun-grown?
I prefer the size of the heads. I think that you can't beat the intensity of the sun in that setting, right? Gavitas are great. They make some really awesome looking flower and great hash from that great flower. But the heads off of sun-grown are just bigger. They're sandier. They're more grainy, right? And all of that equals more in the bag after you start washing. I know that a lot of people have forever grown the same way they've ever grown. And it's hard to say, hey man, I don't take any of my flour and dry it. I fresh frozen everything and I put it in a freezer till it hits the ice water bath. And it sounds like I'm talking gibberish, right? But then they try it and they're like, oh, even that batch of, BHO or whatever, right, came out great.
Yeah.
And then you're like, okay, see, man, like you took one plant. Like imagine if you took your whole crop.
Right.
And then like, you can start to change people's perspective, right? I wouldn't have believed it, right? Like I always grew a few for myself to have flower, outdoor flower. I remember smoking outdoor flower growing up and being like, wow, this is like really clean. Like, you don't taste any chemicals, right? Yeah, no, I love outdoor flower for hash. I love being able to just take everything down, freeze it, wash it at my leisure, maintain that like smell and flavor profile that it was in October.
Yeah.
I like not having a bunch of trim work.
Yeah.
You know, I like to just be able to have it done and out of the way and then just like focus on washing from there on out. And
Yeah.
if it's done right, man, it's like really good rosin and really tasty, and it can be just as white and bright as, you know, your indoor GMO at 75 days versus
Yeah.
84. You know what I mean?
For sure.
Like you can definitely make it look pretty. Yeah, I think it's stronger, you know, not stronger, but I think it's more uniformly strong throughout the pulls. Usually how I do it is I take just the 90 and 120 bag. The rest of it, wasn't enough. You know, I do the first rinse, right? And I'll rinse everything in all the bags. But generally speaking, everything is in those 90, 120. The 73 down doesn't really hold the same way. Not enough for me to put the bag back in and scoop another time. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Like, I catch it all where I can.
Where can people find your seeds, Drew?
So I have a couple of storefronts that have done a wholesale option with me.
Yeah.
So they have everything. Unless somebody's gotten in there and like bought them out of certain crosses, they have everything that I've ever made. That is the Honeycomb Farm in Wilton, All Kind down in Portland. Those are the two that All Kind has most of everything, but I know the Honeycomb Farm has everything. And then online, you can go through Neptune Seed Bank or United Seed Bank, and then East Coast Seed Bank, or direct. If you can figure out a way to get in touch with me, Instagram's huge. Those would be like the main ways to get my seeds.
In what direction are you looking to take Crystal Rose Seed Company?
So right now we're doing another pollination with the OGKB Triple Kush male, who's like kind of our flagship at this point. I have worked him into some lines that have made some really awesome stuff. So we're doing that. We're doing this OGKB Triple Kush run. It has some really cool new things in it that I don't necessarily know if a lot of people are working right now. Space runts from Tiki Madman. I have his cutting that he let out that a buddy of mine from New York gave me to work. Then there is a lava dog from Finest. So it's Chem D lava cake.
Yeah.
And so I picked that one up from a buddy that basically brokers clones. So he has like a list.
Yeah.
And, you know, you make it happen, right?
Right.
And Dolato, which is Gelato 41 Dosido.
Yeah.
Whatever selection from Finest they made. So once that's done and out of the way, I've got a male of Pie-Eyed, which is Pido number 4 from Mega Raw Melts, and the OGKB Triple Kush that Melting Pot blessed me with that male.
Yeah.
That was huge. Like, I remember that story too. That was a crazy day.
Yeah.
But the Pie-Eyed has produced some insane resin, really has some OGKB dominant structure in some of them, and I'm kind of looking to get away from that. So I went and picked a male that once we started flowering, like we got it down to like 5 males, then we got it down to like 3 males, then we got it down to 2 males.
Yeah.
And like, so now we have these 2 males and we flowered them. The one is okay, you know, it just didn't do what I wanted it to. It smelled great in veg, like, you know, it looked good structure wise, but it just didn't have a good flower set. It wasn't very strong when it actually started to flip. It was very floppy. So all of these traits I wasn't really interested in. And both of those males are non-OGKB dominant in leaf structure. But the one that I've now like narrowed it down and made the selection on, and we're collecting pollen and we've retained him and we're going to keep going with that road. He is beautiful. He's got like a really nice cola structure. The flowers, the pollen sacs are very tight.
Yeah.
They're not spaced out and look like a cluster of grapes. They look like a female flower, right? Which is very cool. I'm hoping it makes maybe more of a denseness in his progeny.
People can check out pictures of this pie-eyed male on your Instagram. Yeah.
There's some pictures on Insta. I'll probably put some more up after this interview.
Right.
We're going to be taking pollen off of him tonight, and we did, yesterday and the day before. So he's just about done, right?
Yeah. You separating the days of pollen at all? Or you are homogenizing it?
No, I homogenize it.
Okay.
This is just for collection for my own to have his pollen.
Yeah.
But generally speaking, I only collect on like the peak day. When I flower him again, I'll only collect his peak day flower.
Right. This is for R&D.
Yes, this is all just to see how he looks, see how much pollen he makes. Just see if he's going to be the way of the line I want to go.
How's he looking? He's looking
great.
Good. Yeah,
he's looking. I'm very excited.
Checking off a lot of boxes, huh?
Yeah, if he's got the same terpene structure and the same resin structure, if he's got both of those things, it's a done deal. And we're going to be working him from now on. We won't know that until we hit him to some of these like keeper females that we already know what it's like. So that's also part of why I collect pollen first, is because if I have a room that's going to be for some Sensi, right, I'll dust with that pollen some select branches to then say, okay, cool, this branch I'm going to take the seeds from, grow those, to see if it's worth running that line down any farther.
For sure.
So that's like where we're at. Like I have a little bit of stuff I'm going to test, and we're going to pop those and we'll see what that's like. And then we'll probably put him into a room with our choice females and then say, okay, cool. The pie-eyed F2 and the Pido BX1 is coming. And then along with that are these other things. So that's where everything is, right? It's going to be running down the pie-eyed line, doing some outcrossing. I also have another project where I want to make a femme reversal. Never done it. I don't know how it's going to turn out. I don't want to like bite anybody either. So like Sourdub's like great, but Harry Palms has done it. Cannarado's done it, right? So there's already two really awesome breeders.
Some of the best today. A couple of the best today.
Easily the best today. Some of the best today, right?
I mean, shout out Bodie too, but
definitely Karma, right?
I mean, there's so many. But
there's that top crust is, they're there, right?
Yeah.
And they've already done it. So like, I don't really want to go and reverse a dub and hit it to like my bank, right? But at the same time, I want the dub in the mix, right?
Yeah.
So I have this lava cake cutting came from Finest. It's whatever their selection is. And it's Thin Mint Cookies by Great Pie. I had a really good shot with some Thin Mint Cookies by Sourdub and made some awesome hash with that ended up taking first place in a high 95 cup.
Yeah, that's here. Right. Yeah. Congratulations on that.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
It was a lot of work. My partners and I definitely had long nights watching those plants and even longer nights washing them.
Oh, that's great. That's when the work goes into it, and then you get recognized for that hard work, man.
It was awesome. Cloud 9, had no idea, like if we were going to enter it or not enter it, and just like on a whim decided to throw our hat in the ring, and it paid off for sure. But I want that menthol, sour, astringent flavor.
Yeah.
So I want to, and I attribute that to the Thin Mint cookie.
For sure.
Right.
You were mentioning the OG Kush Breath.
Yes.
And that's a great cookies disposition. I remember the Thin Mint cookies when that first dropped and being like, this is amazing.
Yeah.
You know, that's a great cookie crust right there.
Yeah,
you know,
I don't have Thin Mint as like the mother cut. Right?
No, right.
Like,
Very few people do.
And I'm just hunting, for that same profile, right? Yeah. There's a couple of guys that have another menthol-y flavor profile in their stuff, right? Yeah. But I'm really hunting for that Thin Mint, profile. So
yeah, it's a tasty one.
I'm hoping that in the lava cake, if I can work a reversal with that, maybe hit it with, the dub, or hit it to the dub, hit it to a couple of the other things I have, the D, even the pie-eyed and the pie dough, might be able to pull that profile out of there. And until the day it comes that I find a Thin Mint cut that's verified, and then I can then use that lava cake pollen and hit it back to the Thin Mint, and then really start looking in for that menthol,
That's awesome, man. Well, I wish you all the best with that. It sounds like that pie-eyed male is doing his thing. So
he's the next step of the regular production stuff. The femme stuff is like the next step to break into that market. I'm comfortable selecting out males and culling them. I'm comfortable with knowing that female is a true female.
Right. Selected males is a science unto itself.
You don't think it's going to be when you start. I'm grateful that I had the start that I had, right? I made other stuff that have had a different male.
Yeah.
And they haven't been as awesome as I thought that they were going to be.
Right.
Because I didn't select the male the same way that Melting Pot Farms selected the OGKB Triple Kush.
Yeah.
He definitely looked at it for structure. I mean, I remember him showing me the males and being like, so like, which one do you like? And I was like, if you didn't tell me that these were males, I would tell you that this one looks like Dosido. And like, that was the whole point of the meeting, was to like, which one would pair well with Dosido. And so he made that selection. I made selections after that. Like I selected this Kirkwood from a pack of archive stuff.
Yeah.
Great plant, right? Like I gave all those seeds out as freebies that I'd made with it. Grape Dosido by Kirkwood OG.
Mm-hmm.
Huge plants. Like literally this Kirkwood was like a 7-foot tall male when I was working it, collecting the pollen.
Shaquille O'Neal.
He is ridiculous when it gets down to his kids. Like they are just as tall. Like there are huge grapewood plants out there right now.
Shaq Daddy.
And that's tough for people that like, a lot of people have basement grows.
Yeah.
You can't have a plant that big down there. You know?
Trellis.
2 sets.
Vine them out.
Yeah. So it's tough when you think you got something, or, now the terps on the Kirkwood, insane. The resin, insane. Every box is checked, but he's lanky, right? So it's like he has that OG spindly, floppy stuff that goes on with him, and you have to hit him to a more stout plant. You got to hit him to,
something Ganny leaning.
Right. And I didn't, right? Okay. I had just the grape Dosi, which is Dosido grape pie.
Yeah.
And that was, not a small plant either. It's stretched, and all the seeds from it are stretchy, and just it's tough to go at it being like, the terps are great, the resin's great, but I gotta mash this down into a net 3 times or 2 times in order to get what my canopy needs to look like. So I've selected away from tall, stretchy plants.
How do you feel about defoliation and maybe people breeding for this stretch that produces a lot of buds up the branch, maybe increases yield via defoliation? Are you checking that with some of your breeding practices? Are you seeing a lot of people breeding that?
I defoliate both my males and females. Yeah. I do it at select times. I find that I started doing it just for ease of collecting pollen and getting the pollen out there. I didn't want the pollen to drop onto a leaf and get stuck.
Right.
But for females, I did it for yield. I wanted that light penetration. I wanted that hormone to kick. I do it anyway. So I guess, what is it? Nature versus nurture. Me manipulating my plants at that point to do it. Maybe there's some sort of imprint on the seeds after they get made. But we're talking into hypotheticals that I'm not even,
right.
Those are more darts at the wall at this point.
Sure.
But yeah, no, I do defoliate everything, males and females.
So there's a couple different approaches to defoliation. I've seen some people snipping the shade leaf out towards where the leaf forms and leaving the stem on their buds. And I've seen some people trimming it a little closer near like the branch collar or the collar where the petiole comes in. How are you approaching your?
I go tight to the stalk.
Okay.
Yeah. I take the petiole and everything off.
Yeah.
Just how I've done it. The only thing I could see right off would be moisture issues.
Yeah.
No leaf or leaving the stem, leaving the petiole, right? Moisture stops there, travels down the petiole, down the stalk. Cutting it close to the stalk. Now moisture's going into the stalk. Yes. Open wound, blah, blah, blah. I could see where there'd be a risk doing it that way.
Right.
It's just way easier for me to autopilot and take them close versus far away.
So all the letting go.
So we had talked previously about how you had developed some allergic reactions to cannabis.
Yeah, definitely.
And it seemed like there was a tie-in with powdery mildew that we discussed, but there were some other things that you were taking a look at.
Yeah. So I developed a cannabis allergy, right? I used to be the first one in the trim rooms, the last one to leave, working all day without a mask, just really into the plant in all forms, right? And over time, I got more exposure with working in, different facilities, and they might not necessarily have been the cleanest. In addition to that, I noticed a trend where a lot of those places were transferring over from veg bloom or from bottles to veg bloom.
So these places were switching from a liquid nutrient
Correct.
to a powdered nutrient.
Yes. And so I think that the resin changed at that point too. I think that, we were seeing a lot more greasy resins with the more organic based fertilizers, nutrients, right? And when we switched over to veg bloom and we're running veg bloom pretty consistently, I feel like the heads got more brittle. We're just a different consistency. That greasiness isn't there. Or if it is, it goes away quickly. So I think that there was just more cannabis in the air, more cannabis in the rooms, the essence of it also, right? So it got so bad that I couldn't even walk into a room or a house that was growing cannabis, flowering more so than vegetative, because I could still veg my plants out and get them healthy to go outside. And when I got into my new house, I didn't have any flower rooms for a year. I only had veg space to hold moms, and worked in other flower rooms and still had exposure, but I only noticed it going down, my severity going down as I removed myself from situations that had more cannabis in them, right?
Yeah.
So I wasn't working in a warehouse, or I wasn't going 3 days a week to a grow spot or anything like that. And I also noticed that when I started back up with cannabis and growing it and flowering it, I went organic, and I have felt better. Right.
Yeah.
I don't feel like I have that same reaction. It's still there, but it's way more manageable. It used to be where I would have to come home, take a shower, completely scrub my face, my nose, do breathing treatments with a nebulizer, the whole 9 yards.
Yeah.
It got really bad a couple of times while I washed hash, right, where like I noticed my respirator wasn't functioning correctly, and I had to have to go get a new respirator or new filters because I got the replaceable ones now, right? But like, you know, your breathing, it's something that affects you significantly. And so you're going to do anything in your power to fix the situation. So that's why I stopped growing the same strains and started to like only pop seeds. And that's where I started to buy a bunch of seeds. And then you're like, well, man, you know, I could be making a bunch of seeds too, you know?
Right.
And so that sort of all swarmed into what is my life now. I was growing specifically stuff I wanted to do, and, you know, was growing plants that I was interested in, to growing plants for me, but clean, organic, that isn't going to sacrifice my lungs, that I know exactly from start to finish what has happened to that plant.
That's
right?
awesome. So this maybe spurred you towards having a healthier practice with the growing aspects of cannabis?
All of it. Yeah. You clean up your space a lot more.
Right.
You clean up your equipment. You clean up you. I like got to the point where I bought Crocs to wear in the grow only.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And like, cool, I'm heading to the grow. Like, I'm going into that room. I need to have proper footwear, proper clothes. I try not to overwork myself, right? I find that like if I push myself to like, oh, I gotta transplant all these tonight, right? The next day I'm allergy prone.
So you have a stress response.
Yeah, for sure. That's where I'm seeing it flare up the most now. Another big thing is I used to drink and I don't drink anymore. So I'm thinking that like,
it's great.
Thank you. It's new to me, right? Like I am fully on board with it, like quit cold turkey and then just like kept going.
Not the social pint occasionally.
Just like complete abstinence. And I think that that's also aided my lungs in their like redevelopment of just like getting over that allergy.
Yeah. It wasn't serving you anymore. You left it behind you? Or?
Yeah. When it's your lungs, you do everything. You get one set. Like I can't grow another one. Can't just, what purpose was it doing? For me, right, it definitely like exasperated my laziness. You know, it exasperated my drive. You know what I mean? It killed it, you know? Yeah. It was awesome. Don't get it wrong. Like it's a huge part of our life. Like even after I've stepped away, right? Like I find myself working in a garden and being like, oh yeah, this is where I would have a beer next to the radio so that when I go to switch the songs, I take a drink, you know what I mean? Yeah. And you replace that with something else, right?
What'd you replace it with?
Water, sparkling water. Yeah. Like seltzers, you know what I mean? Yeah, like those are my go-to. But yeah, so I replaced it with that. And that helps, you know. I think that helped my whole lung issue, hands down. Yeah. Removing myself from the situation, changing the nutrients I was feeding. Yeah. And removing alcohol.
Awesome. I'm glad you found that.
Yeah. Well, I don't smoke hash either, right? So like that could be a thing too.
Right.
You know, so like when I was smoking like dabs too, like that definitely was heavy on the lungs.
Yeah. When you were taking dabs, were you going through a water pipe?
Yeah, going through a water pipe, you know, but it wasn't necessarily like the best dabs, you know what I mean? Like closed loop and C1, D1 or whatever they are now, like those weren't a thing back then. You know what I mean? Like you got whatever you got or whatever you made yourself.
Right.
Smoking rosin doesn't do it as bad, right? Like I can still smoke rosin. I don't smoke a ton of them. One dab in every new batch or something, right? Yeah. Just to see how it smokes and tastes, just so I know, right? Yeah. But I'm not sitting there burning a gram down a day. You know, like that's not my speed.
Yeah, and that's like part of the changes that we go throughout life. It's great, you know. It's we find something that's working for us sometime and then maybe we come back to it. Maybe we don't, you know?
Yeah.
The only thing I could say I hope you come back to is some hazes.
Yeah, well, so that, like, I made a joke earlier, retirement plan, but like that's really, it's always been my retirement plan.
Yeah.
Right? Like when I can grow a 14-weeker and I don't have to worry about pulling it on a timeline or, you know what I mean? Like a full mature haze, like in a barn, one per light, you know what I mean? Like I got my dream, it's there.
One of them that just takes up like a 10 by 10 space.
That's what, dude, that's what I'm saying. Just let it do its thing.
Get the thing trellised out for feet.
yeah. And just let it take its time and just like really get back to like that, like cool, So I have like some like random haze stuff like stashed away. That I'm like, ooh, I kind of like, specifically there's like a like mango haze that I'm like interested in, and like the stuff that Karma's doing, the A1 haze crosses and stuff. That's all from like Neville's old stock. So it's like real, not watered down, not polyhybrided out. It's all just who was it? Paul McCormick just released his original haze again. Oh, really? Just a few months ago. Yeah,
I didn't see that.
Did a drop of that. He did a lot of haze work. His was all from Neville as well. Yeah.
It's funny how they all like filter back down to, a couple.
Neville was the man.
For sure.
Drew, it's been awesome hanging out with you, man.
Yeah, definitely.
Thank you so much for coming into the studio. Is there any shout outs or any love you want to give in the community?
Yeah, all love to everyone that got me on my feet and given a start, believing in what I'm doing and how the path I've gone and how I'm going with it. Shout out to Amanda for sticking by me, helping out every day, all day, getting everything done. And you can't do it by yourself hardly ever.
Right.
Yeah. Shout out to Maine, that's like
for sure,
the place to be right now. And, thank you to you for helping me, get my voice out there.
You're more than welcome, brother. Yeah, it's a pleasure.
The word.
Definitely. Yes. Shout out Maine. Lots of love. Nice. All right, man. It's been fun. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
For all the letting go.
The next time you're on Weed Maps, type in All Kind and give them a follow. All Kind is a medical caregiver storefront in downtown Portland, Maine, specializing in finely crafted infused Belgian chocolate and other tasty cannabis edibles and products. We are proudly supported by All Kind and personally love their high-quality products. Check them out at allkind.buzz on Instagram or go to their website, allkind.buzz, to check out their great selection. Listeners of the show receive a 10% discount by mentioning In The Trees podcast to your bud tender at All Kind. Yes, what a high time and nice heady discussion with Drew from Crystal Rose. Head on over to Instagram and give him a follow at Crystal Rose Seed Co. And for those out there who didn't catch where to check their genetics, you can find Crystal Rose Seeds gear at All Kind in Portland, Maine, as well as the Honeycomb Farm over in East Wilton. And if you can't buy local, you can check out their gear through Neptune, United, and East Coast Seed Banks as well. Big In The Trees podcast love to Drew, Amanda, and all the Crystal Rose family. And I want to give a shout out to that Motown music man, Hash Mitten, for this creepy ass Halloween beat that you're hearing called The Art of Letting Go. And I want to send some love out there to you all. Thank you so much for listening. The next 2 episodes, as well as the YouTube videos we're going to release, are going to help further put Maine cannabis on the map. So thank you for letting your family and friends know about In The Trees podcast and our audio productions that are coming at you from essentially a small barn that I built with some friends and set up a studio in here on our land on Georgetown Island. Until next time, thank you all for tuning in. Please visit our website, inthetreespodcast.com, for bonus audio and video content, including more Stony stories, our well-loved blog, and behind-the-scenes features unaired on the show. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel, rate and review us on Apple Podcasts, or download us on Spotify. We want to deliver you more great audio and video content, and your support is greatly appreciated. In the Trees podcast is a labor of love, and our team is committed to providing you a quality show. We are so grateful for your show donations and Patreon support. They allow us to continue providing fun and educational podcast episodes like the one you just listened to, and maybe get some better mics and equipment for the studio. Apart from having access to a ton of behind-the-scenes audio and video, including raw cuts of myself and guests talking about things your kids might need earmuffs for, Patreon supporters also get the opportunity to score a pack of cannabis seeds from intentional crosses that I made in one of my own gardens, which are for tossing in your smoothie or feeding to your cockatiel.
For all the letting go. For all the letting go.